welcome to the April the 28th, 1998 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city, some of the people that were important to making that history, and some that are even continuing to do that today. And that's the case with us today. We have with us Mr. and Mrs. Freddie French. And this is our history tape number 334, and we're so delighted to welcome them to the set. Jane French, welcome to the set.
Thank you. We're privileged to be here.
Wonderful. And Freddie French, we really are glad to see you here today, young man.
Thank you kindly, Ruth.
Thank you. All right, we'll begin our interview with your permission. Jane, if you'd look out into your camera over here and give us your genealogy and set the stage for our interview.
I was born in Commerce, Texas, because that's where my father happened to be working. And my parents were Tom and Mabel Carden. My mother was Mabel Scott. I have sort of a crazy background. My grandmother on my father's side was Margaret Elizabeth Webster, who was a descendant of Daniel and Noah Webster. And there's a little tale about that Daniel's family and Noah's family did not speak to each other.
Oh my.
And my grandfather, Lee Carden, was a contractor. He helped build some churches and buildings in Fort Worth that are still standing. Mm-hmm. And my mother's father was Al Scott, and incidentally, he used to shine boots up in Indian Territory, and we still have the $5 gold piece in the family that Sam Bass gave him when he shined his boots.
Oh, how wonderful, isn't that?
And we have lived in Grand Prairie 46 years.
All right, now let's get to talk about the real Jane French. You were born in Commerce, Texas. Did you go to school in Commerce?
I did.
All right, let's talk about your school days when you went to elementary school, and did you have any favorite teachers or favorite mentors that really made you want to excel?
Yes, my first grade teacher, Elizabeth Murray.
Yes.
I was fortunate that my mother was a teacher and I could read before I got to school.
Yes.
But I enjoyed it, went to Austin School in Greenville. We moved there when I was 2 years old. I went to junior high, Greenville Junior High, and Greenville High School, and then went to college.
All right, let's talk about the Greenville Junior High and High School. As you were going up in your upper grades, did you have favorite subjects or other favorite teachers you'd like to mention on your tape?
Gussie Nell Davis, who was the founder of the Tyler Junior College, well, I can't remember what those
They're the Jeepettes or whatever.
Well, the Grand Prairie, she was in Greenville and had what they call the Flamin' Flashes, which my sister was in.
Yes.
But I was in the band. I couldn't be in that.
Okay.
But Gussie Nell was my PE teacher.
Oh,
and
that is
she went on into Kilgore College, the Rangerettes.
Rangerettes.
That's what it was.
Yes.
And she was quite an influence on my life, as all my teachers were. I had majored in foreign languages. I liked them, and I stayed with them, and incidentally ended up in college with them and kept taking courses I wanted and ended up with 4 majors.
Great. But in the high school, you played in the band. What instrument?
I played the clarinet.
Played the clarinet. Do you still play?
No, I don't. No. I don't play anymore.
Don't play
In fact,
anymore.
I can barely play the piano anymore.
That's wonderful. And after you completed at Greenville High School, and what was the college of your choice?
Well,
and who encouraged you to go to college other than probably your parents?
I don't know.
Yeah. You just knew you were going to college?
I just knew I was going to college. I went the first year to Wesley Junior College. The last year it was in Greenville.
How wonderful.
And then I transferred to East Texas State.
Yes.
And finished there. And then I did my graduate work some at TCU and finished up at Florida State University, where I won a scholarship.
Let's get back to East Texas State. Did you live on campus, and some of your endeavors during your college life?
Well, I sang in the choir.
Oh, good.
I was secretary to the head of the government department. And thanks to Mr. Sam Rayburn, who was a personal friend of our family.
Oh, that's great.
And I I worked. I had to work through. I did not live on campus at that time. It was Depression, and I had to live in a house where I could have kitchen privileges. And then one year I worked at a boarding house where all of the boys who ate there were football and baseball and track people. And incidentally, some of them, I remember the day that they called in 1941, when they called in all of 1940, when we were listening to the radio at noon, and they called the National Guard in and all the reserve, and 3/4 of the boys got up and left.
Oh my!
And about 10 of them didn't come back in World War II.
Oh, that is a sad time, wasn't it? Okay, and your favorite subjects in college, languages? Did you pick out one or two that you thought maybe
French
you might?
and Spanish and English. I have majors in all three, as well as music.
Okay.
But I didn't follow my music as well as I should have.
All right. How about brothers or sisters? Do you have any brothers or sisters?
My brother passed away a few years ago.
Let's put his name on the record.
His name was Tom Scott Carden. And my sister Joy Carden Smith lives in Ardmore right now, in Ardmore, Oklahoma.
Oh, that's good. That's just one state away, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. We talk to each other. In fact, I talked to her last night. We talk to each other all the time. And my parents passed away, yes, but they left quite a bit. I can remember at my father's funeral, the funeral home couldn't even hold the people.
Yes, yes.
So we have
a lot of roots there, don't you?
Oh, yes, I do. I still have cousins there. And I still go home every Thanksgiving.
Oh, that is great.
So we can all get together.
We're going to let you rest just a minute because we've got to get Freddie on this and get him up through school. Right now, we're holding him in abeyance. We don't even know his genealogy. So would you look out into your camera, Freddie, and tell us about your folks?
Well, Ruthie, I was born in Hillsboro, Texas,
right.
a little town about 60 miles south of here,
All right.
approximately. My father worked for a little railroad between Hillsboro and Corsicana, and that train was about the size of a dart bus over in Dallas.
Yes, but it got you there.
It got him there.
Yes.
My mother ran a boarding house.
Oh, great.
And she'd say, son, get in there and wash them dishes.
Yes,
I
sir.
remember that
Yes.
as a child. Then in growing up, I worked selling papers on the streets there in Hillsboro,
Okay.
through the interurban and all, and
Yes.
that was my younger years.
Now, the interurban came from Dallas down to Hillsboro, down to Waco,
That's correct.
right?
That's correct.
Oh,
That's
and you
correct.
got to see all of that happening.
That's correct.
All right.
Of course, that was my younger years, and then
All right. Where'd you go to school when you were a young man?
well, there in Hillsboro, the lower school, the elementary school, and then the junior high. And then we moved away
Okay.
to Texarkana because Dad's railroad, they called it bumping when you change jobs.
Yes.
And his job was changed to go from Fort Worth to Texarkana. Therefore, we moved to Texarkana. It must have been about 1933, give or take.
All right.
And I went to high school in Texarkana and junior college in Texarkana.
Well, now let's stop right here and get back to Hillsboro, to
Okay,
the
bye.
schools you attended there. Were there special teachers, special friends you made in Hillsboro that you have in your memory bank?
Well, I remember my first grade teacher. Her name was Miss Middleton, an elderly old maid.
Yes.
And that must have been about 1926, beginning there. I don't recall the other teachers on up through junior high school.
That's all right. But now, did you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a sister, Christine French Elliott.
Elliot, and does she live in the area?
She did there, yes.
Yes.
And she was a few years older than I am, and the favorite of the family.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And you had to work your way up in the favoritism ladder, didn't you?
More or less.
Did you ever get into any mischief down in Hillsboro that you'd like to talk about, that you weren't thrown in jail for or anything?
Oh, Ruthie, don't ask me those questions.
That brings back good memories, doesn't it?
Well, I've still got good memories down there. There was a fella down the street. His father was a grave digger there in town.
Yes.
His name was Files Daniels. And he was the big guy on the street. Well, as time went on, as we moved away here to Grand Prairie, we had some friends here who took the Hillsborough newspaper. And I looked in that newspaper one day and I saw a big picture of Files Daniels, who was then the police chief down there.
How wonderful.
And he had just gone out with his associates and captured a still out there.
Oh, dear.
That was in a Hillsborough newspaper.
Yes,
15 years ago, more or less.
One of your friends.
Files Daniels. He's passed away now.
All right. Now that we're out of Hillsborough and going to Texarkana, let's get to the Texarkana schools where you went to junior high and high school. Do you have any favorite teachers or favorite subjects or anything
I
you'd like to talk
remember one
about?
in high school,
All right.
and a course in Latin. Now, why I took that, I'll never know, but her name was Opie D. Dalby. Opie D. Dalby, an elderly old maid. But why I took Latin, I'll never know, but it has helped me in my grammar and in my speech all these years.
Yes, it has. The basic, isn't it?
Because English, I was told then, and I still believe now, is basically made up of words derived from Latin background.
That's it.
I believe that's true,
That's
give
true.
or take.
What was your favorite subject in high school? Or
Well,
were you into
I
sports?
leaned not too much in sports. I was a skinny guy and I wasn't too good at it. But I favored, for some reason or other, I was good in math. Now, why that was, I do not know, but it just
happened that way.
happened that way. And it followed me on in later years.
Good. And then on into the junior college there, did you have a favorite subject or was that basic studies?
It was just whatever was given in the school. I did take one course in French.
Oh, yes.
Because my name was French.
Uh-huh.
And do you know that teacher kept me in one day? And she said, Freddie, why, with a name like yours, why are you not so good in French? I thought I'd be good at it,
Oh, yes,
having a background of Latin.
Yes, yes.
Don't ask me why, but crazy things happen.
You did not want to parlez-vous français, did you?
It just did not work for me. That's what, a while ago I started counting in French, and I think I was making a wrong.
Yes.
But that was junior college years. About 1938, we moved away from there
All right.
to Mount Pleasant.
To Mount Pleasant.
To Mount Pleasant, my father and mother and I. And my dad was still working for the railroad, but he was in charge of a lot of acres there.
Yes.
So he says, son, I want you to help me with this farming because I'm going to be away on my runs on the railroad. I says, yes, Dad, not knowing what was involved, but
Yes.
he sent me down on the farm with all of the workers down there, and I baled hay, stacked hay in the barns, and when the summer was over, I told Dad, I don't believe I'm cut out for this. And he says, what? Dad, I don't believe I'm cut out for this. I want to go away to college. No, son. I want you to stay down here and take Holt.
Take a hold.
Take Holt.
That's it.
But I finally made him understand how, I don't know, but I went away to college to ET, East Texas State, where I met Jane a year or so later. And he never did forgive me for that.
And I would think not.
He never did.
He already had his mind set, didn't he?
Why?
Yes.
But that's just the way things work. But he even drove me over there to Commerce in the car and helped me find a place to room and board.
And when you got to Commerce, had you decided on a career, or were you just going to school to get away from farming?
Just get away from farming. I had no idea about a career, no choice, no. It just, that's the way things worked at that time.
All right. All right, Jane, we're going to have to get to you now that we have you all both together at East Texas State. How'd you meet Freddie? Oh.
It's an odd story. Freddie was going with a girl that lived in the house where I did, and one Christmas, we were getting ready just before Christmas, And I had come home from choir practice, and I had that back in those days. We curled our hair on rollers.
Yes.
I couldn't afford anything but rags, so I had Mother's old torn up sheets, and I had my hair done up in pigtails all
Yes.
over. Had on a shirt that was hanging out over my skirt, and had rolled my hose down. We wore hose in those
Yes.
days. And had on some old shoes, and I was in a big chair trying to get mistletoe up in the chandelier. And somebody knocked on the door, and I thought it was someone else, and I told him to come on in, and then Freddie walked in, and
Oh,
he was
my.
going with this girl.
Yes.
Incidentally, I saw her back in 1945 afterwards, and we were both married then and had children.
Yes.
She does not speak to me yet.
I bet she doesn't.
But I met Freddie then, and he was taking a course of government in the class where I had to come in through the classroom to get to the office to work.
Yes.
And he sat next to my two best friends. But I didn't know who he was. I thought it was a girl. He wrote so beautifully, I thought it was a girl.
That's great. he had the push-pulls and,
Yes.
and the circles that we used to make in the writing classes. The
Evidently
ovals and
he
push-pulls.
did. The old Palmer system.
Yes, the old Palmers. All right, and after you met him, did you all get married while you were in college or after college?
We didn't get married until the October after we got out of college.
After you got out
I
of
had a
college.
job with the NYA, thanks to Mr. Sam Rayburn, while I was holding down 3 other part-time jobs.
Yeah.
And so I could not get married, or I would have lost my scholarship.
Yes,
But we waited, and Freddie came over to Grand Prairie and got a job at North American.
All right.
And we waited till he saved up enough money. And the day we married, we had $6. I had $1 and he had $5.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. So that's what brought you to Grand Prairie, Texas, was your job, and then he followed you there?
No, it was Freddie's. It was Freddie's job.
It was
I didn't
Freddie.
move to Grand Prairie until 1951.
All right.
He lived here before I did, and then we moved to Dallas so that we could get. There were no apartments in Grand Prairie.
Freddie, I got to get back to you. I got to know about you coming to Grand Prairie, Texas to work at North American Aviation. What did you do there?
Well, it was the only job. I was supposed to have been a school teacher.
Yes.
That was our training, our background. But the things were opening up at North American out here, and I'd heard they were hiring. So I hitched me a ride over here in the back of a pickup truck.
Excellent.
And got to Grand Prairie, and I finally found a place to stay. Went out there and applied for the job. And I told them I had a degree from East Texas State Teachers College. Oh, good, Fred. When can you go to work? Oh, I can go to work right now if you say so, sir. Well, now we have an opening for a job that's called a setup man.
Yeah.
Oh, great, great. 50 cents an hour,
Yes.
which was good in those days.
Very good in those days.
So I took them up on it, and it was a matter of the North American was building a trainer plane at that time.
AT-6.
That's AT-6. Well, in between the cockpit and between the two pilots' cockpit, there's a big old structure that goes up to the top of and my job was to take those parts and file them and put them in a holding fixture.
Yes.
And here came a welder along and welded them up.
But you got them ready for the welder.
That's right.
That is
I
a
was
setup.
a setup man.
You were a setup man.
I
That
was a
is
setup man.
excellent.
Okay, worked out fine, but I kept feeling now I think I can. I had a lot of shop work in college.
Yes.
I think I can serve them a little better here. So I saw over here in another place out here,
Another department.
another department, that they were building these holding fixtures. Okay, I walked over there and I said, I think I can do this, guys. How do you get in here? Oh, nothing to it, Fred. Go over and talk with the boss. So they hired me down there for 75 cents an hour, designing on a piece of paper on the floor
Yes.
and building these holding fixtures for different parts of this trainer plane.
That's great.
Worked out good. Finally, they says, Fred, you're doing pretty good. we'll just let these other guys do the building while you do the drawing on the floor down here. Okay, nothing to it.
You're doing the raw blueprint, aren't you?
So it worked on out, and here came the P-51 Mustang a
Yes.
little later. And I had a group of 60 jig builders under my,
Yes.
and I divided them up into 3 groups, a lead man under each group. So that went on until about 1943 or 4, and I got drafted.
Yes. And where did you go into the service?
I went, well, I went up here to Fort Sill, and then over to
Camp Robinson.
Camp Robinson in North Little Rock.
All right.
And
What branch of the service?
infantry.
All right.
And then got sent off to the Pacific Theater.
All right. That was something else, wasn't it?
You want to know more?
No, I know that you went through the war there. When did you come back?
It was about 1946, after it was all over.
All right, 1946.
Somewhere about in that
We're
neighborhood.
going to have to do a special interview with you on our military day and get all of the story
Oh
of
my
the,
goodness,
of
you
that.
don't want to know that.
I know it, it's
We was blown
bad.
up in a truck explosion
Oh my.
in Korea, in occupation.
Oh dear, oh dear. We will talk about something else. We may get back to that story, but let's get on with your 2 lives. And y'all have moved to you've moved to Grand Prairie to join him here at North America?
No, we still lived in Dallas.
Okay.
And our children went to school there. We bought a little home over there.
We haven't gotten your children on this record, so we need to know your kids.
Patty French, and she's Patty French Wood now.
All right. And where is
Arlen
she?
Wood. She's in Grapevine, and she is secretary to the CEO at Baylor Hospital in Grapevine.
All right.
And our son, Frank French,
Yes.
they both went to high school here
All
and
right.
elementary school. Excuse me.
Okay.
And Frank turned out to be a hospital administrator.
Excellent. Very good.
And he's working now in Las Colinas.
He's nearby, and so is she, just across
Even
the
our
county.
grandchildren
Oh, that is great.
and great-grandchildren
That's wonderful.
are all within 20 miles of us.
All right, what brought you to Grand Prairie?
The schools,
The schools, all right.
our children were not getting what I thought they should. And they were not teaching them phonics, and they weren't teaching a lot of things. And I called the Texas Education Agency, and they said these were the best schools for that in Texas, in our area.
Yes.
And so I called Mr. Chambers, that I had known in Greenville, incidentally. He was superintendent in Greenville, too, at one
Yes.
time. And he hired me, well, he didn't hire me at that particular time. I went to work at what they called Chance Vault back
All right.
then.
Okay.
But we entered our children in Austin School, and they went to Austin School and Lee Junior High and Grand Prairie High School. Both graduated. Not with the best grades in the world, but I think our daughters graduated the same year in 1960.
Yes.
But I just could not understand why they were teaching what they were, and the principal of the school told me to leave my children alone, that I was not teaching them right.
I see.
I was teaching them at home. And 2, we had been members of the Grand Prairie Radio Club with Freddie's Amateur Radio.
Yes.
And I even got my...
And what is his call?
W5PUB,
W5PUB. That's a good call.
since 1949.
Oh, that is great. All right, and from Chance Vault, then you applied at the schools?
At the schools. My children were getting older. I came home one afternoon. The stage band was in the living room practicing. They were all getting ready for UIL.
Yes.
The Woodwind Quintet was in my son's bedroom. A cappella choir, 9 of them, were in my daughter's bedroom, and Freddie was back in our bedroom talking to Alaska.
What a mess. What a
And
mess.
I thought, I cannot do this. Boys and girls in the house, and I wasn't there.
Yes.
And so I decided that I had to have the hours that they did. So I went back into teaching, and I loved it. I loved the kiddos.
Where was your first assignment here in Grand Prairie?
Grand Prairie High School. Well, I substituted a year. But I was substituted all but 17 days of the year
Oh, my.
of that first year. So I decided I'd just
Go full-time.
Go full-time. And Mr. Tom Holly, God bless his soul, came in and he says, Janie, I thought I was going to teach English.
We have 3 minutes left on this interview. Tell me about high school.
I enjoyed it. I had over 4,000 students.
And you taught French?
I taught French, I
And
taught Spanish, typing, and the last 3 years I taught English as a second language.
How wonderful. What an experience. And you retired in what year?
1980.
1980.
And then I worked at a bank a year.
And what bank?
It was Independent American
All
back
right.
then.
Okay, Independent American
And then
Bank.
I started traveling with Freddie and his work. He was traveling with his work at that time.
All right, let's get to Freddie's work. Freddie,
Yeah.
we're going to get you up to about in Grand Prairie after North American. We have just 2 minutes left.
Well, I worked, coming back from the war, I worked for a little window manufacturing company out where Love Field is now.
All right,
And they went out of business in about 1960.
all right.
So I thought, well, it's LTV out here now. I just can get back in out there after all these years. So I walked in there to fill out the papers for a job. And as luck would have it, an old boy was walking down the hallway and looked in, whom we knew each other back during the North American days. And he says, Fred, what are you doing out here? And I recognized him. His name was
Hank Gwine.
Hank Gwine, Henry Gwines. And he had risen on up in the association, in the
Yes.
company, to a higher place of responsibility. He says, Fred, why don't you come on and go to work for me? I'm the head of this department. I says, yeah, Hank, when can I start? He says, come on tomorrow. I'll shove this paper on through.
And he did.
And I did. That was 1961. Well, I worked on through that into other places, into several design efforts in the airplanes and the missiles. Retired in 1990. 1990, due to my age and all that
good stuff. Don't y'all do a lot of volunteering here in Grand Prairie?
Yes, we do.
What do you love the most?
Working at the Tourist Information Center. It's the first time we've ever been able to volunteer at the same time with each other.
Oh, and that working at that, you meet more wonderful people.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And you do such a good image for Grand Prairie. When they meet the two of you together, they couldn't help but get a good impression of the city of Grand Prairie.
Well, I talk when Freddie does the maps.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you all very much for coming to be with us. Have we left out a lot of important things? But the next time we do an interview, we'll bring up all of those other things, and we're going to take Freddie on his military career
That
one of
would
these
be
days.
interesting.
That would be very, very interesting, whether he wants to remember it or not.
Yes.
Thank y'all so very much
Thank
for
you
being
so
here
much,
today.
Ruthie.
Thank you, Ruthie.
It's been
our
wonderful
pleasure.
to have you with us.
We
And
appreciate it.
This is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.